We're on air. How do you want to proceed, Patrick?
We can't. So, I guess first you can't see them probably, but we wanted to recognize that we have several members of different trade unions and particularly the building trade unions who are here just to show support and solidarity for the Fraternal Order of Police, and we thank them for attending as
Absolutely.
Members of the community and appreciate their support.
The more the better.
Now, we've submitted a couple of proposals recently. I don't know if the city has had time to get those from Mr. Clark and digest those, and if there's any feedback or response to those.
We have,
Okay.
but as far as discussing them here, are you making them official
Yeah,
proposals?
we'd like to make those official proposals, and we have. I don't know if you already have them.
If you can hand out, then we know we're operating on the exact same stuff.
I've got them printed out here, so.
Let's see, we've got 5 PDAs over on that side.
We need one for Andrea, so we give us 6.
So I think that's 6. And then Val, I don't know if maybe you could address the sworn proposal there, and then
So there's
there's one for. So what I've given you is one copy each of what we'll do as a proposal for the sworn officers, and then one for the non-sworn side. And then Val, maybe you could address the sworn proposal, and then Mary, if you could address the non-sworn areas.
So which packet are we discussing first?
Why don't we take this one that's, the heading on it is Union Proposal number 6.
Okay.
Go ahead, Val.
Okay, the purpose of this is by increasing the third class patrolman to step 5, or to 5% instead of off of 2.5. We feel the starting wage, thus the recruitment of officers would be better here regionally, and with the extra 1%, it increases each grade percentages from 5 to 6. And we're also better able to retain our officers with more competitive and a timely scale, mostly here in this region of southeast Idaho. While the city's offered a pay scale with 8 steps, the union did not agree with dragging out the extra time that it would take for the patrolman to get to those steps. But based on the 8-step plan the city proposed, the Pocatello officer would take about 10 years to reach pay similar to officers in surrounding agencies get to reach in 8 years. By maintaining the 6-step pay scale, officers would reach similar pay at a rate in a similar amount of time. And also by changing the 1.75 increase from the 1.5 increase and adding a full percent at each of the increases that change in rank. We're also working to eliminate some of the compression between the top master step and the first step in the new rank, which will be made worse and give less incentive to promote based on the 8-step scale versus the remaining 6-step scale. So based on the 8-step scale, a topped-out master patrolman will be receiving a 3% raise to take a promotion to corporal, and a topped-out master corporal will only receive about a 4% raise to promote to sergeant. So based on the fact that they lose seniority and shift bidding preference, a 3 or 4% increase would make it even less likely for those officers to seek out promotion. During the last promotion cycle, all but 2 eligible sergeants tested for the lieutenant rank. However, less than half of the eligible corporals took the test for sergeant. This shows the issue of compression of the rank of sergeant, not lieutenant, and another reason to increase to 6 instead of 5 is justified in our view. So some future considerations: maintaining the 6-step scale, making advancement to corporal the time and grade versus the testing process. Moving the testing process, as we now do from corporal to the rank of master corporal, to minimize the number and cost of the assessment center for sergeant. This also gives 3 final steps for officers who choose not to seek out supervisory positions in the department, but allows both the department and officers more flexibility in assigning positions such as detective and other assignments. They can go back and forth. If you're in detectives and you want to go back to patrol and be a traffic officer and ride a motor, you cannot do that currently. This would allow for that. While adding these 3 extra steps adds a slightly longer time scale, it would immediately make us competitive with Idaho Falls patrolman wages. Alternatively, use the percentages between the steps, such as the current 2.5 and the 1.5, to reach a scale that is competitive with other agencies, along with percentage increases to 3rd class rank, which is still at least 2% behind the average, not including Boise area. Starting wage, but would still be 6% behind our closest competitor of Idaho Falls starting wage. Look at the chart for comparison. Using only wages for the first 8 years of service from Idaho Falls to Pocatello, you can see how it compares and how far behind we are currently.
And just for the record, this graph that's reflected there that's the proposed increase. Because currently the first number there would be 21.6 versus 22.36.
And I need to understand that the 22.36 does not match the 22.68 that's in your chart on page 1. Is there a reason for that? I'm just trying to figure out what is the true number, and it may be a typo, and that's what I'm assuming.
Right.
But I'm just trying to figure out what's the.
Yeah, we just apparently missed the number.
So off this chart, though, right?
So it's the 2268.
Right.
Okay. And the 2268 has what percentage increase in it over and above what the existing beginning rate is?
21.6, it's 5%, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you've got 5% into the
Built into the starting wage.
into the starting wage, and then you bumped up some of the multipliers between the steps.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Have you costed this out to determine what the cost is, either in total or in components? What a 5% increase would be?
No, not based on current manpower we haven't, no.
I have questions. So, on number 2 and number 3 on this chart on page 404 is number 2, you have IF at 2448. What is the 23.7? Is that supposed to be 23.70?
Right, yeah.
And where is that number on this chart here? I'm just trying to track.
Did we get our 5% numbers into the second column there?
No, you didn't.
No, so, okay, so as to
We'll do
the-
one and I'll snip and I'll put them beside each other.
Right, the second column there. Right, you can see those numbers there with the 22.68 and the 24.04 and 25.48.
So should like number 2 be 2404? Is that?
That's my understanding. Right,
Yes.
yeah.
And so the percentage behind is
Based on these
Much
numbers.
less, much
No,
less.
it's, because if you look at the column 23.65, and if you were to compare that with 22.36, that's more than 5%. I believe, you can do the math right here, but.
well, I'm just trying to figure out was the percentages in the fourth column based upon the numbers in columns 2 and 3, or is only column 3 the clerical error, and those percentages are true percentages based upon what those numbers really should be?
So looking at it from here, the percentages are true. When you look at, for example, row 3, 25 being 98 cents behind at that level, that would be more than a 3.9% difference between those two. And so the 3.9% is going to be based off of our 25.48. If that's
And you're
it.
sure of that?
Well, I can see just looking at it that 98% or 98 cents would be more than 3.9% of 26.1.
Okay.
My calculator on my phone.
Now, in determining what Idaho Falls makes, did you add in their longevity?
Well, those are their step as far as what they get at each stage for longevity.
So I'm just trying to figure out, is this just their base?
This is just their base.
This is just their base.
So you haven't added in what their longevity would be from a company?
If we added in their incentives, the percentage would be greater, but no.
Okay.
This is just base wages.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, you want to go through the second proposal then?
Right.
Is this going to be proposal 7 or?
Heather, I have one more question. On page 3, on lines 8 and 9, it says, move the testing processes we do now from corporal to the rank of master corporal to minimize the number of costs in the assessment center. Can you be a little more specific on that?
Rather than having to have worry about the master corporal testing, that position would be more of an assignment rather than just a promotion.
So from corporal to master corporal?
Yes. So you would do the testing process to go to master corporal, not corporal. Corporal would be somewhat of an automatic step.
So we would have
Descending grade.
to move a testing process right here from corporal to master corporal, is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you would go directly from master patrol, step 6 to corporal?
Yes.
Okay, and you couldn't go, you couldn't bypass master patrol and go to corporal?
So you're saying they're a topped-out patrol officer would end up at, according to your scale here on page 1, it would be $31.18. And then they would test to go to the next page, which is on page 2, to the $31.65. Is that what that's saying?
See it at $28 to top down master patrol.
So it says move the testing process we do now for corporal to the rank of master corporal. I'm just confused.
I don't,
Yeah, it would continue on from that master patrol to corporal.
so that's listed under a future consideration. Are you asking for that change at the table, or is it just something that this helps structure for?
I think that it's built on that structure, and so I would say that's, yes, part of the proposal.
Okay.
And humor me, so the way I'm reading this, based upon about what you said, you couldn't become a corporal until your 9th year of service.
Master corporal, or master patrol takes how long to get there?
Well, you
5?
said it had to go clear through, so you've got 6. You'd have 3rd class would be 1 year, 2nd class would be 1 year, then you've got 3 first class years, so that's 5. Then you have 3 master patrol, which is 8, so it'd be your 9th year before you could become a corporal.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay. And then you wouldn't test until your 12th year to see whether you become master patrol.
Master corporal.
Master corporal, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mary.
Yes.
So your testing would happen sometime during your 11th year, so you could transfer in if you passed in your 12th year to master corporal. And so the soonest then you could become a sergeant would be 15 years.
Potentially, yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out so that we understand this. Can you become a sergeant now without having 15 years of service?
Yes.
Okay, how does that work? So I can see what you're proposing as a difference.
You get to master corporal in roughly 5 years. Master corporal. I'm going to just guesstimate probably within 8 years. By the time you end up master patrolman.
Are there time
Third corporal.
requirements built in each one of these? Do you have to stay a certain amount of time on each one of these?
I don't think so,
Okay.
for the purposes of it.
We can take a break and look at that.
I'm just trying to understand.
I understand. Yeah, we might need to take a caucus to review this real quick.
Well, I guess the thought process, the long and short of the thought process is there's not a lot of positions for people to move up. So if they get stuck in a position to where they cannot promote, we're trying to keep them here so that they can continue to move up, even though they don't have a promotable title. Because you can't promote unless somebody retires, somebody does something crazy and gets fired, somebody just quits and leaves. And so the idea was trying to give people the opportunity to not only move around the department, but also the opportunity for their pay to increase as they are here for longer, instead of saying, well, now I'm stuck in this hole, so I'm just going to go somewhere else. It was the idea. It might not be ironed out clearly, but that was the purpose of the proposal.
So my understanding of the proposal, it's a timing grade. Is there any requirements such as training hours, certifications, certificates that are also included in this?
No,
As far as a
no.
change to the current requirements, I don't think so.
Not right now.
Yeah, we're just trying to understand because you're changing one of the criteria for movement to a different rank of testing and take that away now. And it would be appointments. So I'm just trying to figure out whether you have to go through all of the various steps until you top out before you move on, or can you move on within that concept? That really makes a difference in the way you look at the step system.
And so, I mean, are there individual positions there that are, okay, so as far as this goes, are there changes that we want to make to the amount of time that you have to stay in a given position or beyond what exists now?
Well, if we're going to move to that kind of a scale in this, we'd have to look at limiting the number of years you'd be in these positions so it didn't come up to be 15 years before you become a sergeant.
Are those built into that? Are those time limitations built in now?
Before we
That's-
caucus, would you like to present the civilian pay?
Sure, why don't we do that?
So the non-sworn proposal is essentially the same as what was presented to at our last meeting, where we would move the non-sworn fully off the police general or the city general employee pay scale onto their own pay scale, reducing the steps between the market range from 37 steps to reach the top of your pay range to 25. And then a modification of the percentage increases between steps, with the biggest thing being that the recognition that the way we get hired, the higher standards that we have to maintain as employees of a police department, that you're giving rewarding that added behavior with a 2.5% increase that's built into those 25 steps. So we have is using the BDPA study that has been established by the city, having 6 steps to reach your market average. At step 6, then, you are at market. And again, looking at the steps that, looking at the general steps for the city, it tends to range from 3.5 up to 3.92, I believe, percent between each of those steps up to pay grade to step 6. After that, on the city general employee scale, from step 7 up to 37, they sit about 0.42% to 0.48% or 0.5% every between steps. What's noticeable is that step 9 and step 12 on the city generic pay scale does have a higher increase of about, sitting right about 1%. And we reflect that in the proposed police scale, and that tends to be when you're going to lose people. So what we've done is instead of having a bunch of small differences like the city has on their pay scale, is we've just made it simpler with a 3.75% increase between steps up to step 6 to get to market. Again, these numbers pretty much mirror the cities up to step 6. Then from step 7 to 15, you have a 1.15% increase, which tends to be when we would be losing people and we want to maintain our good employees here. Step 16 to 20 at a 0.85%, and step 21 to 25 at a 0.65% increase between years. And again, that's moving, the city generic scale is 34.05% on average as you move from step 1 to step 37. And we've increased that by approximately 2.5%. So over the course of that scale, it's at 36.6% over the course of 25 steps. And if the city stays true to scale, where they give about a step a year through the pay range, that would be if someone were to start at step 1 and stick with the city, you'd be 25 years in that position versus 37 years that we see on the city generic scale. So those are the highlights of that. And again, the biggest reason that we're doing that is a recognition that the policing involves non-sworn and sworn, that we meet the same standards in hiring and in maintaining our employment with the police department, as far as our background checks, our drug screening, all that kind of good stuff that we have to maintain to extremely high standards to get employed and to stay employed with the police department. And then recognition of the added stress of being in policing. Studies have shown that the stressors experienced by the non-sworn are very similar to what's experienced by our sworn officers on the street.
So other than the percentage changes in the consolidation of the number of steps, is there a base increase that you built into this?
Negative. No, the base increase would be what the city would give on the CPI. So it basically is going to mirror, as far as what the city would give a generic employee every year. We're not asking for anything more than that. It would just be, essentially, we want to move to this different scale where we're a little more compressed and across the 25 steps.
So the 1553, does that include the base increase over what the current city scale is?
Oh, negative. No. Right now, the city scale for grade 4 starts at 1553. So this, what you are looking here, the matrix that I provided to you would be basically at FY 2019's numbers.
So for fiscal year 2020, you're asking for a 2.5% adjustment.
It would be it would be what the city is.
Well, there's a difference between CPI and what ends up on the general generic employee scale. So which one is it? So
and that is actually somewhere we presented this prior to, we basically presented you with the previous matrix. We would be asking for what the city is going to provide the general employees, sorry.
But this one is built on a 2.5%.
What you are looking at is not built. There is no added increase to this at all. This is based using FY 2019 numbers and no adjustment for CPI.
So all you've done with this is taken the current pay numbers and changed the multipliers between the cells.
Correct.
And eliminated some of the cells.
Correct.
So this is presentation of a new chart, but you are also asking to match the general employee increase, and is there anything about a step this year?
Well, it'd be the CPI and the step, and that's what we had.
It's not written in, and if you're not on the general employee scale, what's given there does not match, so I want to make sure we understand your full proposal.
Correct. And if you look on the second page, we put in there, we moved one step along the scale of the matrix would be changed. At this point, it says reflect the CPI adjustment of no less than 2.5%, because I understood that was what the city had
So
at that
you're
time
asking
built their
for
scale for.
an increased match to the general employee chart.
Correct. Essentially, we're acknowledging that BDPA did a study that set what the market values would be, and that the police employees should, the market average would reflect that.
So that's a change to page 2, line 6.
Correct. To say to match what the city offers of no less than 2.5.
So, so that's different things. I need to understand. It's either it matches what the scale gets, or you're asking for a minimum of 2.5.
A minimum of 2.5, and then to match what, or to match what.
Or to match.
Correct.
Essentially, if the city employees were getting 2.7, then they would want 2.7.
But if the
So
city
it's a
employees were
guaranteed
getting
base.
2,
Then they would
want
2.5.
And then that's given the understanding from HR's presentations is that these scales were based, that we're looking at now are based on old numbers, and that there had been no CPI adjustment over the last several years. And that would take 6.1% to actually bring us current.
Any other questions on proposal number 7?
No.
Chief? No. Did you guys want to talk us to figure out my question, and then we can talk about that? Okay.
Paradise.
Thank you.
Okay. So just as to the question that the chief had relative to the corporal, master corporal thing. So we probably didn't do the best job of clearing that up at the outset. So if you look on page 3 or 4, under line 7, it actually says future considerations. So this is something that the union is essentially suggesting as something that would help alleviate some of the compression and give master patrolmen 3 additional steps. But as to time requirements and testing requirements and things like that, even if that suggestion was adopted and accepted by the city, it's not something that would change the time requirements. So, for example, you have 1 year at 3rd class, 1 year at 2nd, 1 year at 1st. Then you need your intermediate certificate and 2 additional years to become a master patrolman. All that stays the same. And thereafter, you know, if you're an ambitious high flyer and you want to take a test for corporal, that's something that you can do. Right. Well, master corporal would be the test under this. So rather than testing for corporal, it would be a change of just testing for master corporal under essentially the same requirements that you can do that now. The real change would be that, let's say you're not necessarily a high flyer, you just kind of want to punch in and punch out. After 3 years as a master patrolman, so long as you had your advanced certificate as well, then you become a corporal. So it essentially builds 3 additional steps in for master patrolman, really. After that, the rest of it doesn't change. So the time that you have to be at corporal before you can test for sergeant would now apply just to master corporal. So what it would do is it would fork the road. so that those who are interested in management, those who want to advance, would test for master sergeant or master corporal, first, and then the guy who isn't particularly interested in managing, just wants to work, would remain as a corporal. So right now, where you have a set number of corporals, and that's a paid position and something that even management has to make a decision. Even if you pass the test, management has to say, okay, yeah, we want you to be a corporal. The way that works now would shift to master corporal. And anybody with their advanced certificate and 3 years as a master patrolman would then just become a corporal, which would also alleviate problems as far as getting some guys with a little more time and seniority onto some of those shifts that not everybody wants to be on. You could get a little bit more age and experience onto those. But again, that wouldn't be something that we would want to get hung up on. That's more a suggestion that we think would solve some of those problems for the department. But the percentage increase is really the focus here. That's kind of a suggestion that we think would kill two birds with one stone, but that doesn't have to be a part of this.
I guess my question is are we negotiating that or not? Because it looks to me like what you're talking about is in par right now. And that's probably the best place to deal with it, is within par, not dealing with it within the collective bargaining.
Well, you would have to tweak par just as to essentially that one testing required to move that from corporal to
I'm just
master
talking
corporal.
generally, that you deal with the criteria.
Well, no,
and
but the rest of it
testing
doesn't
and
change.
and
The rest of the
movement.
testing and criteria doesn't change at all. The only material change to testing and criteria would be what right now applies to corporal would now become the master corporal. And you would just, after 3 years as a master patrolman, you would just become a corporal. So that wouldn't anymore be a tested for limited number of spots type of situation, which you're right, you'd have to tweak par, but not a lot. And if that's not something that the city wants to get into, then that's sort of a severable part of the proposal, if you will. That doesn't, from our perspective, have to be part of this proposal. That's something that we think would be helpful. So it's a suggestion that we're making, and to the extent the city is on board with it, then yes, we're on board with it today. To the extent the city is not, then that particular thing can be dispensed with, and we can stick with the 5% increase and the percentages between columns. We don't want to cause a panic.
And
make-
that's why we put future
make
considerations.
corporals think
I would
they're-
rather look at this at a later date where we could sit down and, I prefer it to be a future consideration.
That's fine.
So-
Then we can just stick it just with the monetary percentage increases.
Okay. Okay, let's deal with the union proposal 7 first, which is the non-sworn. And the city's been consistent with is it's not inclined to add a fourth salary schedule to monitor and deal with within the concept of its compensation scheme with all employees. But even if we were to do that, this proposal, in my opinion, is unworkable because we don't have the data necessary, the criteria necessary to implement it. What criteria are you going to use for cohort placement?
Or sorry, what are you going to use for what?
Cohort placement?
Cohort placement?
Cohort.
When you say cohort
No, when you
placement, what are
take
saying?
when you take 37 steps and condense it down to 25, you're eliminating 12 steps. Which 12 steps are you eliminating? Is it the last 12? Is it in the middle? And
Well, I don't think that they're eliminating
Excuse me.
specific steps. Well, I think that this will answer your question. I don't think that they're eliminating actual specific steps as far as, okay, step 19, let's get rid of that, and step 23, I think they're saying instead of this many, let's have this many. So essentially all of those steps theoretically are eliminated, and let's have new steps.
Right, but how are you going to place the people that are on the old 37 step onto the new 25 step? That's a cohort placement.
Right.
Okay, so what criteria are you using to do that? And it's going to be an individual basis,
Right.
so that placement doesn't cause someone to go backwards.
Right.
So we don't have any idea what your concept is with that until you disclose that so that we can compare that and look and make sure. We don't have any way of costing this out. So
Well-
and time's running short from a budgetary standpoint. Sure.
Correct,
I don't
but
think we
we
have the time to
actually-
look at that.
We actually did do that. That's why I provided you with the scale of what would be fiscal year 2019. Is that the employees would go to the step nearest to their current salary without going backwards.
Sure.
And then
And
that,
so there's going to be some employees that move a step or more just from the cohort placement, and then they'll
No,
move.
it would be one. They would just go to the
Not-
next step in
Not
relation to their-
necessarily, until you start doing it. I've seen cohort placements where people move 2 or 3 steps just because of the way the
Right,
salary
right. So what
matrix is
she's
set
saying
up.
though is that the way that this is set up, they would just go to the next step. So no one's going to go more than one step. It would just be to the next step closest to their current salary. So nobody's going to go more than one step.
Well, but if the closest to their near salary is 2 steps away.
But it wouldn't be.
It
There's
can
no
be.
such thing. There's a closest step and then there's a next closest step. So it would go to the closest step.
and in general, when I have done this and I've put people on we haven't had anybody moving further. What it's actually done is compress people.
Right.
As you're aware, we have some folks that are off the current pay scale, and this would bring them back onto the pay scale. So we do have folks that have not seen a raise at all because they were out of their what BDPA put them as their matrix, and it would bring them back onto the scale. So it's not even that they would get an advancement it actually tightens people on the steps as far instead of spreading them out.
So you're doing a wage placement.
Well, what do you mean when you say wage placement?
You're taking someone's wage and then placing them on the new chart.
Right. Yeah,
Correct,
based
yeah.
on, so for
Taking what
example,
they're-
so if somebody was making $20.48, well, the closest step is step 6, PD 26, right? So they would move to 2054 on their next rates. As an
And
example.
That was on the second page, starting at line 3, where we addressed that, where it says non-sworn members' new step placement will be determined by being placed on the new scale closest to their current pay without a reduction in pay. And then for fiscal year 2020, each member not in the probationary period would move 1 step along the scale, and the matrix would be changed to reflect the CPI adjustment. So we did try to address that. And when I have costed out, again, using what I figured out would be like the worst case scenario, like budget-wise, as far as if every position was filled, even starting like some of our new dispatchers, where we've been starting them at step 3. So using a kind of a worst case scenario of what it might cost on the non-sports side, we're still sitting at just under $20,000 difference between what the current city budget being built at 2.5% would be. So that would be, the biggest effect would be approximately $20,000 at the high end on wages.
I understand the wage placement. I can't speak to her
Yeah, I have no idea either. Until we see what you've done in the data.
Can you provide that
Really
to me
can't
last time?
comment on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the same. That's the same one that she gave you last time. I mean, you guys have that
And we
exact one for
rejected that
several weeks.
proposal.
I know, but it has a number.
Right, but
so-
did you guys analyze it as far as understanding what it meant, or did you just reject it?
I looked at it.
So then,
Once again, we're talking, I wasn't provided the data she used for her placement, so I couldn't compare my numbers to her numbers. Because when I built the chart based off of the information in the proposal, it did not match the chart that was presented to us.
meaning, but what was it that didn't match?
I have 2 open negotiations and it was a proposal, so I don't have a lot of hard data to respond because it was rejected.
and again, the numbers and when I'm giving you these numbers of the wages being 20,000, that's not, I know when you build your budgets, you're always looking at is if every new hire is on the family medical, and so I did not include medical insurance.
Okay.
And that kind of stuff. So if you're adding that in based on like family and such,
So
it's good. Your numbers are going to be higher.
You're saying less than a $20,000 increase before the 2.5 and before the step.
That was comparing movement of people to this new scale
Without an
with the
increase.
step compared to what you were building the current budget at 2.5%, which is what the previous meetings had been at before they came up with 2.75 and 3% that Ashley's building on as possibles. But using 2.5% in this step on the city generic scale versus 2.5% in a step on the police scale, it was just under $20,000 in wage increases.
Are you tracking?
Ashley, or do you understand what I'm?
Yeah, it's not overall budget impact, but
No, it's I'm looking at the wages.
Just like-
It still comes down to adding a fourth salary schedule, and we're not inclined to agree to do that.
So
So we're rejecting 7.
you're just rejecting outright. Okay. So then I want to make a record kind of the way we see this. So the union sees this as an attempt by the city to divide the union in half. Their unwillingness to take the non-sworn staff off the general city, we feel is essentially a divide and conquer kind of tactic, and especially where most of what comes back from the city is either for them, for non-sworn, or for sworn. And that's part of what we'd like to get past is attempts to divide the union rather than allowing them to stay together as a bargaining unit. And so we see that as a tactic of the city to try to make the union resent itself by where if the sworn feel like they've got a good deal and they want to accept it, even though non-sworn didn't get a good deal, or vice versa. And so, I mean, we've got to stop doing that. I don't even think that it can seriously be questioned at this point that that's kind of what's going on. Especially where it's just rejecting proposals without making a counter proposal. I mean, what came back was just for the sworn, right? Without acknowledging non-sworn at all. And I mean, that's, we don't see that that's a productive thing for us to be engaged in. And especially where, I mean, I understand logistically that probably adds some administrative cost to have a fourth pay scale in place, but once it's in place, it doesn't seem, or am I wrong, Ashley? Does that create a significant amount of work in your office to track that?
yeah.
What are, just so
We
can
have to
understand.
build a whole new table, and then if anything changes, we have to update each table individually if there is a market adjustment every single year. So it does take quite a bit of time.
Okay, but when
can
I
you
built,
approximate? Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say when I built this, and the reason that you see that like with the zero there, I built this so that I can put in 2.5%. There's a CPI, and it just automatically populates.
But
So I'm
our
kind of
system's old. It's, I mean, that's Excel. Excel is awesome. Excel is better than the payroll system that we have right now. I'm not gonna lie. So it's pretty manual.
Sounds like something you should probably invest in one day.
Yes.
Patrick, you made your comments.
There's no counter proposal at all for the non-sworn?
No, we're negotiating with one union. We're not negotiating with two separate unions, and that's the way that it seems that you want it
But their
to
pay
be.
scales are separate already.
We're
because-
negotiating with one union.
Right,
And it's interesting
but
that
they
you say
have-
that
But the
because-
non-sworn are not first-class officers. They're not second-class officers. And so we
We're
have to
negotiating-
talk
we're
about two
negotiating
different.
with-
Wait, please don't do that.
No, you
But
interrupted-
well,
you interrupted me first.
We don't, we have to
interrupted me
negotiate
first.
on their behalf. We can't be asking for
We're negotiating with a
first-class and
single union.
second-class and
The single
third-class
union has to
officers
decide
for
how they
non-sworn.
want to present.
We understand that, but
Okay, but
we've
we are not
presented you
doing
with a
anything
proposal
to
for their
try to
pay.
split.
Are you going to give a counter proposal for their pay,
The
or is the city's
proposal-
position that they're not going to pay them again?
No. Last year, the non-sworn got 2 steps.
Okay. Did they get a percentage increase?
Neither did the sworn.
The sworn got nothing.
Okay,
Let's not
because
got a step.
they got a step. The
If they had a step
Non-sworn
to take.
got 2 steps
I didn't
because of what
But that's
happened the year before. So that was,
Right.
that was a special consideration given to the non-sworn last year.
Okay, so
So
what-
so the
what's
issue
going on
here
this year for the
is,
non-sworn?
our proposal has always been the same, that the non-sworn, because they're on the general salary schedule, there's no generic salary schedule, the general employee's salary schedule will get the same percentage increase, whether it's a base and a step or both, that is ultimately given to that salary schedule.
Okay, but that's not even what happened last year.
Okay, what I would like to say
Well,
is that you
that's our
just,
proposal this year, and that's
you
where we're,
just
that's where
made
we're
our
sitting.
point.
That's where we're
Because
sitting.
we had 1 year where the sworn were given advancements for their master positions and nothing went to the non-sworn. The next year, the non-sworn, we gave up longevity. And then the year after that, it was, well, now we're going to give the non-sworn 2-step increase and we're going to hold the sworn. So you just made the point that we're trying to make, is that the city has been using this as a divide and conquer measure for years. And I appreciate you making that point for us. Thank you.
That's where we're at with proposal 7.
Okay, 6?
Can you caucus, please? I do have a, I'd like to talk to you guys about something.
You want to take a 5-minute break? Sure. Okay.
We'll just stay here.
Okay, go ahead, Mary.
So with your insistence on going with keeping the civilians on the general employee pay scale, then our proposal would be to move all the non-sworn employees up 1 pay grade, move them each to the next pay grade up. That's approximately a 5% increase to go from 1 pay grade to the next. I do understand that that might be an issue then up at pay grade 12, but that would be approximately 5%. It would be matching what we'd be request on the sworn side.
So just so I understand, is it would be just a 1 pay grade move, but there would be no step movement?
Probably just in addition to whatever else is coming. So if they're eligible for a step, then they get that too. But in addition to whatever else is there, the pay grade increase.
So there's a pay grade move, and then there's the application of whatever the general employee salary schedule changes are. Because it could be a pay grade move, a 2.5% increase, and a step increase combined.
One moment. They,
Whatever step increase is already coming.
yeah, the step increase for time and grade and 5% to compensate. So if you don't want to build in 2.5% over a course of 25 years, then the increase pay grade to compensate for that. So it'd be the one movement in pay grade and one step for their time and grade.
Well, wouldn't there have to be separate cells set up for that? Because otherwise, if you just move a pay grade after the 2.5% is added, you'd be getting that as well.
They would,
Sorry, say that again?
When is the application of the pay grade change? Is it after the 2.5% in the step, or is it before?
that they would start fiscal year 2020 at one step above what they have right now in their new pay grade at whatever the new scale is built on.
So if they're moving grades, are they moving laterally amongst the grades? So if I'm at a 3, if I'm an H6 step 3, do I go to an H7 step 3 and then receive my step increase to go to an H7 step 4? Or do I get a step and then am I placed by value? Are you placing by step number or a memo?
By step number.
And that placement is done prior to the 2.5% increase, or I'm just trying to figure out the steps.
Yeah, so just going off, if you were, just using the very first one, if you were pay grade 4, step 1 right now, and then in fiscal year 2020, you would go to, if you were going to be a 4 step 2, you would then be a 5 step 2.
And then you get
And
step.
then whatever the city
Market
CPAP would be.
adjustment.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
We'll talk about that now or wait.
Wait.
This is our counter proposal primarily to Union Proposal 6. This is a consolidated proposal which is similar to the one we previously made. The only difference between this one and the previous one is page 1. All of the pages are the same. And page 1 basically is a 4% increase to the base on the salary schedule.
Just like looking for fuzzy glasses.
Sorry, it pieced weird.
Comments? No? Okay, me? All right. So, all right, just looking at part one here, just doing the rough math really quick. I mean, that's still 6% below the starting wage at Idaho Falls, and it keeps going. Once you get to step 3 for the first class, you're at a 9% difference. And you know, really our goal with the negotiations are to stop people from leaving, and on the top end, and create a situation where the department can attract quality applicants and isn't last in line, and this keeps them last in line. So yeah, 4% increase really just doesn't close those gaps, and really those are gaps with last year's numbers. We don't know where they're at. Well, I mean, we know Coeur d'Alene got 10%, and then now they're 15-16% above Pocatello, and so yeah, I think that probably is. I mean, I won't speak for everybody, but I think that's probably a non-starter, where that just doesn't change anything at all on the first part of that proposal. If we go to step 2, or part 2, I mean, I guess that we would just reject that outright, just in light of the proposal that Mary has made orally. Part 3, as to harassment, ADA, and EEO. I mean, I guess this is just moving the civilians under the purview of the city rather than within the police department.
No, they're currently under the purview of the city. This moves them to the police department, except in matters of discriminatory
those
harassment,
issues,
EEO,
okay.
and ADA.
Is that?
I have no issue with that.
Okay, so we can accept part 3 there. Part 4 on the shift differential.
That was good. Yep.
That's okay?
Yep.
So we can accept part 4. So part 5 is just rejections?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so part 3 and part 4. Okay, I think that we probably have to just, I guess, re-offer our most recent proposal, because this just doesn't, it doesn't help, it doesn't fix the issue. I don't know.
The 16-cent increases does nothing to maintain our people.
Come up with a 16-cent.
16-cent an hour increase does not do anything to retain our people.
Where do you come up with the 16 cents?
Going off of the master patrol rank, at step 6, 2721, going from 2615, where they're currently at, to a 2721.
It's $1.05.
Right. Your previous offer was 90-cent increase. This is a 16-cent adjustment.
So it's an additional 16 cents,
Yes.
not
Additional
just an
16
offer of
cents.
16 cents.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right, no,
It's like-
it moves the offer forward 16 cents an hour.
Yes.
Okay, that makes
That's what I meant to say.
Okay.
I understand now.
So it was really interesting during the June 13th City Council meeting where Councilwoman Adamson spoke so eloquently in favor of a raise for each member on the City Council, $5,000 annually for part-time work. And she made very good points about how at some point the City Council needs to realize how far behind other cities it is, and that if they don't increase that number, they will not be able to attract quality candidates to run for those offices. And that was to call it outrage within the union at hearing their same arguments parroted, and then to watch the City Council approve a $5,000 per person raise when no one within the police department will get $5,000 brand new dollars for their full-time dangerous job, whether they're civilian or sworn. That reflects a lack of tone deafness that is difficult, I think, to assess. But I'll just parrot what Councilwoman Adamson said so well, is that unless and until the city realizes how far behind other departments it is, it will continue to lose qualified, highly trained officers who get plucked up willingly and happily by other cities like Idaho Falls, who keeps a fenced-in parking lot in Blackfoot where their officers who live in Pocatello can drive their civilian cars and pick up their squad car and drive the rest of the way into Idaho Falls to subsidize the commute. I mean, that's happening, right? And until the city acknowledges how far behind it is, that will continue to happen. And Idaho Falls will also get its pick of the best officers out of the academy, whether they live here or not, because they can pay so much more. And it's especially difficult when we look at the fact that the department runs a surplus of between $700,000 and $800,000 a year. And I've reviewed in Chapter 10, Section 2, that supposedly requires them to roll that into the budget, which is not true at all. There are two sections to that statute that require first that you, in your proposed budget, set forth all of your expected expenditures, which you would anticipate would be required. And then the second part says all of your expected sources of revenue. And it says right in there that you can also include, or you should also include, the estimated balances or overages in existing accounts. And so to say that the city is required to roll that $800,000 into next year's budget is not true, because the city could just, as we proposed, estimate zero from those $350,000 to $400,000 in salary savings alone, and say we're going to pay that out as a retention bonus. Okay, they could do that just as easily. So it's difficult to look at something like this and know that there's money there now. They don't need new money. There's money there now, and yet the city doesn't want to share that with the people who put bulletproof vests on, and have to put themselves in harm's way so that the rest of us can stay out of it, and yet are willing to pay themselves $5,000 brand new dollars, and even tell the media that they haven't had a raise for 10 years when they had one 18 months ago.
So as far as the reserves go, we actually have a reserve policy within the city And so all of those additional reserves were required to go into reserves. They could not be used until the general fund met its reserve limitation, which was 25%. We just barely met that reserve limitation. So that's something that we couldn't have done. If you're wanting to use that as a continuing source of raises, it has to be budgeted for, which means you have to cut where those savings came from. So if those savings came from not hiring 4 positions, those 4 positions have to be gone to be able to use that money over and over for raises.
Well, so logistically, I understand that the budget itself would have to change. I'm really just speaking about the fact that there's money that's not being spent. And I appreciate that there was an internal policy to return all of those dollars to the reserves, but that was not a legal requirement, because I've actually been through extensively the statutes governing municipal funding, and there is actually its own individual statute that allows a municipality to redesignate funds. It empowers municipalities to say, okay, we're going to follow our process, we're going to do our hearings, right? But this line item that was dedicated to this thing, we're going to rededicate to this. And it's not limited in time. It can happen any day. A city can decide to do that.
Right.
And so that could have been done. And I appreciate that if we're going to negotiate an increase, that the budget will get bigger. I understand that reality. What we're saying is that the money to do this already exists, whether it's built into the budget or not. And we look with a little bit of skepticism at the reserves. We know that they're full, but so as an example, at the most recent meeting, I think it was you and Chief Shai who sat on June 13th, and you put two more positions to approve up there, okay, for the police department, which would build the budget by an extra, I don't know, 150,000, something like that. But the problem is that they already have open positions that they can't fill. So adding that to the budget just ensures that they won't get it, but more will come back to the reserves. An extra $150,000 will then be able to be scooped back, because the budget was inflated so that we could then pull that back, even though we knew they were never going to be able to hire those guys.
They have every intention of hiring them. And that's what the council is expecting.
Right?
Yeah.
On January 10th.
That's not, I'm going to stop you right there. That's not true. We have people that we have conditional job offers to right now, to where we will be at that point. The point to asking for additional officers is for a safety standpoint,
right,
not to inflate the budget.
Well, that's not you. I'm not saying you're doing that to inflate the budget.
But I want to be clear on this here, that those 2 additional people were to continue to ask to grow as the city grows, and that's for a safety thing, an officer safety thing.
Because right now it's not safe. You don't have.
No, I disagree with you. I'm not going to tell you that it's not safe. I think that's an inaccurate statement.
Okay.
Well, I'll disagree with you, because I think that it's not safe.
Well,
not that it's not safe because we're not good at what we do in our job, but as far as the amount of people that we're working with, as far as I mean, if you guys are talking about stuff very well in lawyer and administrators, we're here representing the people that work here, okay? And all I'm saying is, I don't feel that it is safe to have people, myself included, looking at this and saying, I'm getting paid for a job that other people are doing the same way, the same time, the same style. I'm getting paid $5 less, $3 less, $4 less an hour. It is not safe for me to feel that way, because I'm telling you right now, I'd have to talk my wife into letting me to go to work every day to do this job. And it's not safe for me to be like, you know what, maybe I just won't do stuff as dangerous because I'm not being paid what I'm worth. Or maybe there's not a lot of guys that are showing up because they're like, it's not worth it for me to show up. I'm not doing this. Or maybe there's guys and girls looking for other places to go, which we're losing their advanced knowledge that you have provided us. You've trained the crap out of us. You've trained us, you have made us
to
good.
Make you safe.
You have made us good to make us safe. And now the person like Val or Brandon or myself that have became, I think, an efficient officer are now considering leaving a city that I love. That is the human aspect of this whole thing. And you guys have just said, 4%, that's it. That's all we can do. I don't do this for a living, Heather. I don't do this for a living, Ashley. I don't do this. Tell you the truth, I'm on vacation. I want to be with my family. My wife's off, I want to be with my family. But the problem is that we've spent time to prove to you guys that we're not making crap up. We're not making this up. And then you're just gonna say it's just 4%, like that's all you got, that's it. I mean, I get it. You're dealing with the fire department, you're dealing with the salvation department. Everybody in this city is probably at some point underpaid. All we're saying is that it is not right for us to have to do it for so much less. That's all I'm saying. I just don't feel like why I'm asking why do we at the city of Pocatello have to do it for so much less than everybody else? If you can explain that to me and make that seem like, okay, well, the reason why we do it for less in Pocatello is because of this, then maybe that's something that we could take back to the body to explain. But I don't think that anybody here can explain why we have to do it for so much less. Because the last time we tried to do that, it was based on the tax bracket. It was based on it's just a bunch of churches in a university. Well, we are doing the same job as other people. So why do we have to do it for so much less? I think that's the question that has to be answered. That's it. Sorry.
Okay, I was referring to, the only thing I was answering his question is adding the 2 people to inflate the budget. All I was saying.
And
we were not doing that.
Just to be clear, no one on our side of the table thinks that you were suggesting that in any way disingenuously.
Okay.
Ever. My implication is aimed straight at the city council.
So if you can answer why we deserve to do it for so much less, doing the same job, then that's something that we can explain to people. Because right now, that's what I feel like we can't explain. I can't explain it.
Anything else?
So you don't have the answer why we deserve to do this job for less than other people that do the same job that we do.
I think that's your personal decision.
So I should leave. Is what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying
So you're
is.
telling me that I should
What
leave.
I'm saying is everybody has to make a personal decision on what they want to do based upon what they get paid. I'm not telling you anything other than this is what we have on the table.
Do we need anything else? That's ridiculous that you would say that. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
You go get shot at. You get the best thing. Well,
Probably wasn't a good statement to make.
And I didn't mean that.
but it was, it was tone deaf. A lot of it's tone
But
deaf.
everyone has to make a decision on their job.
Yes,
You
and that's
decide
all I'm
yours,
saying.
And
Everyone has to make
And that's all I'm saying.
And you guys get to make decisions on your jobs because we do what we do to protect you.
And if the money was there,
But it is there,
We would-
Scott.
I said this 1,000 times.
money's
on the
there.
internet.
The money's there.
Actions speak louder than words, and your actions are speaking volumes. So,
But the money is there. We can see the money. We know it's there.
we're at the end of our flexibility. We're where we're at.
it's unfortunate. We have fought this fight to preserve our people, keep them from going to other places for employment.
Understood.
City council, whoever has chosen that doesn't matter to them. They're okay
Which is
with
really
losing you.
true. I understand
It's unfortunate.
saying you can't keep everything exactly the same as it is and pay them. I don't believe that either, but that's one thing. So we've got 5 people over there, right? The chief is wearing a bulletproof vest. Why does he wear a bulletproof vest? Because he has a job where he might get shot. That's a reality. Why is he wearing a gun? Because sometimes he might have to shoot somebody, all right? And the very last thing that, if we had to cut everything, right? If there was $10 in the budget, 10, right? Everybody else would go home, and guess who would get paid? The chief would get paid. Because the last thing we're ever gonna get rid of is the guy who stands between us and the people that are trying to hurt us, right? It's the very last thing. And if you need to change things, as we talked about in our second meeting or something, fundamentally, in order to do that, then, that has to happen. Because the road we're going down now is mass exodus. I know you didn't mean it hurtfully, but like all those guys that just stood up and left, they're sending text messages, they're on the phone, right?
Sure.
That's going to go like wildfire right now. And all I mean, they're sitting out there with all these other union reps. I don't know what they're going to want to do at this point, but I mean, what is untenable is the city cannot afford to have a mass exodus, right? If the city lost 20 officers tomorrow, it could not sustain that kind of exodus, particularly because, frankly, as a criminal defense attorney, I'll tell you right now, his department is by a country mile the best law enforcement department in shouting distance of this place. When I get cases for, I can't take them anymore, I got a conflict and everything, but when I got Pocatello police guys, very little for me to do. When I get county guys, I got a lot to work with, okay? When I get stuff up in Blackfoot, when I get other places, I got ISP, I got stuff to work with because shockingly, like, they really suck at a lot of things. You know, you bring an eyewitness in here, what are you gonna do? You're gonna hand him a little card that says, you don't have to identify anybody. It's given to him by an officer who's not investigating the case. You guys record the encounter, right? They do great things, great things. They're so well trained. They have great policies in place to protect constitutional rights. It's night and day with all of the other law enforcement departments in the vicinity. And so if this department starts losing people, the quality of police work generally is going to suffer greatly. The county could afford to lose some guys, and yeah, I mean, everything is stretched a little thin, but at least you still got good police work being done here, right? If you get rid of guys who are doing the good police work, you got, I mean, problems. If you were to look at the stats, the dismissals, cases that get axed over at the courthouse, I'll tell you, the county would be stacking up against 791. 9 dismissals for every one of theirs, probably more, frankly. You got a lot to work with when you get a county case. You don't have much to work with when you get one of those. And it is just unbelievable to me that the city has such a great asset there. I mean, you got to look long and hard to find departments that are that good. And they are valuable enough to be the highest paid. If it were possible, they should be. Now, I don't know if that's possible, but they're the lowest paid. And it's not close. There's not like another city of similar size that's just a little bit better paid. They're all way better paid. And they know that you train the crap out of your guys. They love it. They love it. They've got, I mean, Idaho Falls buys a parking lot halfway from there to Pocatello. They know they can get these guys. I don't know why. We know that the money is there, and at some point, my goodness, the city council has got to realize that this police department is one of their most precious assets, and it's really good. I mean, the guys grumble a little bit about Marchand. I'll tell you, he's got good officers. Got to get some credit for that, right? Lots of good guys who do their jobs exactly right. And Idaho Falls knows that. They want them all. Twin Falls knows that. They want them. And they'll get them. Yeah, it's, I don't know. The mayor's comments in the media to me reflected that there was some kind of information he wasn't getting, or maybe he doesn't listen when you guys talk. I don't know. It didn't feel like he understood what was going on here at all. It didn't feel like he understood anything. That's why we want somebody there to be here. First of all, we think it puts an unfair burden on you guys to be the heavy, to be the bad guys, to be the ones that have to go back and get whatever marching orders you get, and then have to come back here and face the fire. That's not fair. But it's also not fair to us to not have anybody here who's going to participate in that decision, so that we can have any confidence at all that they really know what's going on.
At this point, how could they not?
I don't know.
The council's aware of these discussions. We've been in touch with the council. You're extrapolating a lot of information out of a couple of sound bites from the media, but the mayor and council are very aware of what's going on, and we're not here independently. We had an executive session just yesterday with them.
I saw.
Getting them up to speed on where things are at and where we are still headed.
I was hopeful when I saw that, because I watched those calendars and
Good.
I read the agendas and things because I want to make sure. And I came in here with my hopes up today. But I mean, these guys, yeah, they're just we're gonna lose awesome guys. I mean, we've already lost Zimmerly, Doug, all those guys, the military trained guys. You know, like that's an asset. That's someone else's asset now. And really, the city is paying way more than it would just to keep good guys. So I guess we're still at 5, or the actual proposal we gave you. I don't know if there's going to be any response to that or not.
Yeah, we give our 4% is our response to yours.
And there won't be a forthcoming, because our counter is just to go back to our offer. But
Yeah, and we won't be raising ours.
so what does that really mean as far, Ashley, is the budget built out? What is the budget built on?
I believe it's built on the last offer from the city. That's what we'll build it on.
Okay. So like, so they'll get it anyway without even actually signing.
Yeah, we'll be building the budget on our last best offer. And it goes to notice on the 12th.
Right. Okay.
Which essentially means that we have not participated in any kind
Right,
of
it's not really a
negotiations.
negotiation if it's like you don't have to sign a deal if you just give it to them and that's what's going to happen. That's not a negotiation.
Well, that's what we're building the budget for.
I understand.
So,
I understand.
I mean, it's not necessarily what everybody is going to get. They can still change their minds. Basically, what we publish in the paper, we can change our budget up to the time they adopt it. It just can't go any higher.
Right.
So
No, I
if they
understand.
decided they wanted to pull all raises off the table for whatever reason, they still have the opportunity to do that.
And we
even
understand
after
that.
publication.
We're just saying that this has not been a negotiation, though. This has
So-
been, you've provided us what
Right,
you're
I
willing
mean,
to do, and that's.
I mean,
Well, that's your version of
simply-
events.
No, I
don't know
think
how you
that's
could
pretty
say
well
this hasn't
been
been-
laid
But if it's
out.
like if it's a here's our offer and that's actually what we're doing, no matter how you feel about it, that's kind of a sham negotiation.
Well,
Not
we've
saying
met
you
several
guys
times trying to
are
reach a
sham.
consensus.
Well, and we can, we can
We
go
understand that
back.
you only get the authority that you get. And we understand that you don't come in here with decision-making power. There's a range that you've been authorized to, and so we're not making you guys the bad guys. We're just saying that feels like a sham negotiation.
And we can go back to the last negotiation meeting of last year when HR, Heather representing the HR, had said that they were aware
On behalf of the city.
Yeah, on behalf of the city, of the fact that the sworn were falling so far behind, and that they would be actively working on it and working to resolve that for this next year. And we came into our very first negotiating meeting this year, and you had nothing to put on the table. And so that tells us
And even this
What
one
it
is
was-
just,
what was
I mean,
really
it's
going on.
barely above inflation. Okay. Well,
I was just gonna say, I think, I mean, our reality is that, I mean, we're gonna lose people, and it's hard to fill the spots now. That we think there's a significant cost with that. If we can go back, if you guys can go back and talk to the decision makers to see if there is some more money available, I think that would help make people feel better about staying in their position versus leaving and going to look for work elsewhere, and not even in policing. But I think that you've seen here today that, you know, people are, you know, on the, you know, at that point where decisions are going to go one way or another. And I mean, there's lots of other members that are watching online and that are going to be, you know, hearing about things and how they went today. You know, our 5% would be a good step towards getting us to where we need to be in terms of, you know, our market values that we've came up with. And specifically, I think that would show, you know, good faith towards the members and help retain some of our officers that are truly the future of this department.
And we don't disagree with anything you said from the standpoint of the quality of the department, the quality of the people in the department, the need for everybody to feel appreciated. Many times wage is the only way that there's an indication of appreciation. And we all understand that. And there's a lot of factors that go into this. And we go to bat for you as hard as we can go to bat for you. But we can't create the money that doesn't exist. And that's the problem. And
Well, I guess we're done then.
okay.